entirely about it. The book is only a pretext. So in terms of my methodology, what I want to do this evening is to talk more about the afterlife of Gandhi, while the slides are about his death, because you can see that the title of this book is The Death and Afterlife of Mahatma Gandhi. And we might ask ourselves, when I say Mahatmas matter, or the Mahatma matters, or matters concerning Mahatmas, what is a Mahatma? Who is a Mahatma? And in this book, I propose a very simple explanation or definition. A Mahatma is somebody whose afterlife is more important, more powerful than his life. And it's very interestingly illustrated in the Bollywood film, which many of you have seen, I'm sure, Lage Raho Munna Bhai, where the Mahatma is actually a ghost, yes? Whereas Attenborough's Gandhi is about the life of the Mahatma. So it's a hagiography. But Bollywood understands that the afterlife is more important. Now, let me get back to the slide. This is the place where he died, where he was shot, assassinated. This is the Birla House, and it's on 30th January Road in New Delhi, 30 January Marg as we know it, and it's now called the Gandhi Smriti. And his body was kept out in the balcony for some time for people to go and pay their homage to him. And this is what he looked like after he was shot. There's no pointer here, but you can see the garland of bullets on his chest. In fact, his son Devdas Gandhi said that keep his chest exposed, because let people see that he took bullets on his chest. In fact, just a couple of days before he died, he told his grandniece, he said that if I die of pneumonia or a common cold or so much as a pimple, proclaim to the world that he was no Mahatma, but a charlatan, a fraud. But if I die with bullets on my chest, then I will have died as I lived. So you see the 3 bullets that he took. 2 passed clean through him. One was just above his stomach, above his solar plexus. The other one was in his chest. And the third one, so these 2 went right through him. And the third one was in his lung, and it remained in his lung. In fact, he bled. It was, as they say, halal. He kind of bled out so that the face was also very pale and ashen. As I said, that if the afterlife of a Mahatma is what defines him, if the afterlife is greater than his life, then we should ask, what is the significance of his afterlife? And in this book, I try to argue that to understand the meaning of the afterlife of Mahatma Gandhi, we have to contemplate his death. What did he die for? Not just who killed him. So this is his body decorated with some flowers, and those are his 2 grandnieces and Mani Ben, who was Sardar Patel's daughter. They surround him there. This is the Mahatma, this is Gandhiji, and his assassin, Nathuram Vinayak Godse. And another way to define a Mahatma is that a Mahatma cannot be appropriated by any particular party, ideology, or group. They may want to make cultural or political capital out of him. In fact, there are wonderful accounts of how in his death he also united the Congress party. Nehru and Patel, Sardar Patel, did not see eye to eye. And indeed, Gandhiji had a very long meeting with Nehru. And after the prayer meeting, he was supposed to meet Patel. And, he was called for his prayer meeting. He was late. And he said, I'm late. And that was his last prayer meeting. And when he fell, his watch stopped working. It was 5:17 p.m. on the 30th of January, 1948. But what I was trying to say is that many people have tried to make political capital of his death, blaming certain people on the one hand and trying to take credit for his life. But not everybody knows or remembers that the day before Gandhiji died, he wrote out his last will and testament, where he said that the Congress party should be dissolved and that the Congress workers, having attained independence, were not required. They shouldn't turn themselves into a political power and seek office and the spoils of power, political power. Instead, they should fan out, go to the countryside, serve the people, almost like a parallel government, keeping officials in check, keeping bureaucrats and politicians accountable. So you can see that there were a lot of people who were very, you might say, displeased with Gandhi, which he wrote about in his last days. So a Mahatma is also somebody whose legacy, whose life or afterlife cannot be appropriated by any individual group or political party or ideology. A Mahatma always resists such pigeonholing, slotting, categorizing. So everybody knows or has talked about the links of Nathuram with RSS. He was indeed a member of the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, for some time. And then he left the organization. He was very much a part of the Hindu Mahasabha. But the real point, whether it is for all of us, or for the RSS, or for the Hindu right, or for Hindu nationalists to think about, is whether you want to follow Nathuram or Narendra Modi. Because the first thing that our Prime Minister did on assuming office was offer a floral tribute. He offered flowers to the picture of Mahatma Gandhi in his office. So what I'm trying to say is that you cannot drive a wedge between different sections of India on the basis of Gandhiji. And as I said, if somebody's afterlife is greater than their life, which really means that marna ek cheez hai, lekin sochna, samajhna, pachana dusri cheez hai. It's very hard to digest Gandhi because he keeps, in a sense, defying us, provoking us. And it's that persistence of who he was and what he stood for which makes him a Mahatma. This is the funeral procession of Gandhiji. One of the many ironies about his death was that the so-called apostle of peace and ahimsa was taken in a gun carriage to the cremation ground, you know. And that gun carriage is still preserved in the Gandhi Smriti. You can look at it. It's a bit worn for age, but it's still there on display. With all these army people, and of course his own army of khadi-wearing acolytes at the back. This is another view of the funeral procession, which went past India Gate towards Rajghat, where he was cremated, which also makes him very interesting in the history of Delhi, because Delhi is full of the tombs of emperors. You know, many, many emperors are buried here, and also of saints. We heard of Moinuddin Chishti, and we in fact heard of Khwaja Nizamuddin, his sort of grand disciple, because his disciple, or great grand, because his disciple was Bakhtiyar Kaki, whose mazar is in Mehroli, where there is a Phool Walon Ki Sair, which Gandhiji said, don't disrupt after independence, by the way, which was one of the last places he went in January in 1948. And then his disciple was Baba Farid, and his disciple was Nizamuddin Aulia, whose compositions, or in whose honor Amir Khusro's compositions you just heard. So the point really is that Delhi is full of the mazars of saints, and before that of other saints, before the Sufis, and after that of others. Don't forget that Guru Tegh Bahadur was also martyred here. The point is, Gandhiji and Guru Tegh Bahadur are the only ones who have two kinds of memorials. A memorial like Rajghat for their political significance, and a memorial for their spiritual significance. These are some of the newspaper headlines. Hindustan Times was edited by his son, Devdas Gandhi then. It was a newspaper owned by the Bidlas. I showed you the house in which, on the grounds of which he was killed. Now, that was Bidla's house. But if you see the room in which he lived, he wanted to send out a message, which was, he was off Bidla House, but not, he was in Bidla House, but not off or for the Bidlas or the rich capitalists of India. In fact, all his belongings, there were so few of them, they're still preserved there. His glasses, his watch, his shoes, his khadao, and he slept on the ground in a tiny room in that huge house. So these are some more of the newspaper headlines that you can see here. This was the newspaper headline of Dawn, which was a Pakistani newspaper. It still exists. It's very interesting that this is his funeral pyre, and his granddaughter Manu writes that the pyre soon got so hot that nobody could sit around it. So as he lived, he died alone in solitary splendor. This is Sarojini Naidu's broadcast on his death, where she says, "My father, do not rest." Now, this is the opposite of RIP, rest in peace. And this is the point I was trying to make, that Gandhi's afterlife, if it's greater than his life, is going to fill all of us with some kind of chemical locha in the brain, to quote Lage Raho Munna Bhai. He doesn't let us rest. He haunts the body politic of India. And the real question is, what is this man and his life? What is the meaning of it? And why did he die? So his death was this yajna, his last yajna. These are his very words. And he offered his own body as an ahuti in that last yajna. But what was the yajna for? The yajna was for saving India from an endless partition. What is an endless partition? An endless partition is a cycle of mimetic violence that gets played over and over and over again. And why is it important to save India? It was important to save India because India stands for something. It doesn't stand, Gandhi himself said it, India doesn't rise for herself alone. But India has that capacity or that power or that message which can actually be of great use to humanity in the present times, which are, of course, a time of great crises. And one might ask, what is that message of India and of Gandhi that India can offer to the world? And this is what we come back to when we think about Mahatma Matters. So, these Mahatmas who trod the soil of India since times immemorial were essentially trying to tell us one thing. And that thing that they were trying to tell us is that we are much greater than who we are or who we think we are. And there's a purpose for our being here on this earth. And that purpose is not just to identify ourselves, with daily life as we understand it, but use this opportunity to, in a sense, realize ourselves, realize who we really are. And that was what Gandhi's Satyagraha was about. So the last thing that I want to leave you with is that when Gandhi wrote Hind Swaraj in 1909, he realized that modernity was self-destructive. You heard about sugar earlier. In that sense, all these sugars are metaphorically symbolic or emblematic of our modern way of life, which is in the end going to be suicidal because we're not living in harmony either with nature. There are three worlds, the world of the humans, the world of nature, and the world of gods. Now, these three worlds are, in a sense, out of kilter. They're not in harmony. And the message of the Mahatmas is really to get these worlds back into harmony so that we can save the human race and our habitation from self-destruction. And that is why this Mahatma matters, and all these Mahatmas matter, and that is why India matters too. Thank you so much.